Welcome to another edition of Serving St. Clair County. This is Sheriff Tim Donnellon, and today we're going to talk about our Detective Bureau, and we're going to talk about how the Detective Bureau in real life is a lot different than it is on television that everybody watches in the evening. And joining me tonight, or this afternoon, is Detective Lieutenant Matt Paulus. Matt?
Sheriff?
Well, thanks for coming on the show with me this afternoon. And you've got probably one of the most challenging and difficult jobs at the Sheriff's Office as a detective, a lieutenant there. But before we get into your job description, tell us a little bit about your history, Matt. I know that we go back a long ways together, but let's let the viewers hear about your different stops and journeys along in your career.
Sure. You know, I've been very fortunate, Sheriff. I started in the Marine Division shortly after I graduated from college. And from there, I went to the Road Patrol.
Yeah,
worked probably 4 or 5 years worth of nights.
Yeah, probably 85?
Yeah, in the mid-'80s.
Mid-'80s,
Mid-'80s. And I was able to go into one of the contracted townships, which is Fort Gratiot.
Right.
Spent some time there. Spent a year with the traffic enforcement with the Secondary Road Division.
I forgot about that. Yeah, working the night shift there?
No, that would be a day enforcing the traffic laws and accident prevention.
I was thinking of the alcohol enforcement car.
Oh yeah, I did.
You did a little time.
You know, I've been fortunate. I've been able to spend some time in each of the divisions, which now in a supervisory position, it gives me kind of the unique perspective to be able to see where problems are, and try to improve on some of the systems we have.
Well, you worked, I know, on multiple levels of patrol. You were on the SRT team, one of the original members.
Right.
Then you made sergeant back in patrol.
Well, even prior to that.
You were detective.
Even prior to that, I worked in the school district. I was the school liaison officer for Port Huron School District.
That's right.
For 3 years.
Yeah, so you did the GREAT program, DARE program.
Yeah.
Did that.
Gang resistance, and I worked a lot with Port Huron South, the alternative school.
I remember that.
A lot of the middle school principals.
You've kind of been everywhere.
Yeah,
and then you were full-time detective.
Was a detective, and from there I promoted to sergeant to the Road Patrol out of the Detective Bureau.
And then from sergeant promoted to lieutenant.
Lieutenant, and worked, again, some night shifts, did my time on nights, and a couple of years on the day shift, and I've been back in the Detective Bureau for a little over a year now.
So you're still a detective, but you're our detective lieutenant. So you're plain clothes and overseeing our detectives. Let's talk a little bit about the makeup of the Detective Bureau so the citizens kind of understand,
Sure.
who's back there and what that entitles.
Well, as you know, we've had a lot of changes over the last couple of months.
Oh yeah, absolutely, a lot of retirements.
Currently there's 5 spots. We have 1 detective that's assigned to the major crimes unit with the Port Huron Police. So it leaves us 4 detectives in the actual bureau.
Okay.
We had 2 retirements recently. David Patterson, which was a senior detective back when I was in the Detective Bureau, and Sandy Jacobson.
Right.
And they both retired just in August.
And that's about 60 years of police work right there.
A lot of experience.
A lot of experience.
A lot of experience walked out the door at the end of August. So.
And they were long-time detectives, career detectives. So
over 10 years, each of them had over
Because
10 years.
you and I both were detectives, and we both promoted to sergeants and moved out of the bureau. And we both came back as detective lieutenants later, but there's a percentage of depths that we really love to see go into the Detective Bureau and become career detectives.
Right, and Dave and Sandy would exemplify that. And you'll see the experience comes in a lot of the legal processes, the search warrants and the testifying in court. That takes a long time to develop those skills.
Absolutely, and particularly that testifying. I mean, that's what makes or breaks you a lot of times. Let's talk a little bit about the cases that end up in the Detective Bureau. Some examples, some of the major felonies, and so how a citizen knows whether. Sometimes I know that when you and I were both in patrol, people think that a detective's coming on every case, and that's just not the case, especially when you only have 5 detectives.
Well, and again, we have 4 that are assigned to our bureau here. And we do it on a case-by-case basis. We assign detectives to active cases that need investigation. For example, if there was a crime that occurred that there was nothing to follow up, we didn't have any physical evidence, we didn't have any suspects to interview, that type of case wouldn't necessarily get assigned to a detective.
Sure. Right.
So a detective is going to be assigned when there's leads to follow, whether there's suspects to interview. A lot of this is linking pieces.
Right.
Pieces of the puzzle, whether it's another police report, whether it's a piece of evidence, whether it's an interview. It's putting all those pieces together.
Well, it's part of the reason, like we hooked together the major crimes with Port Huron Police, because, a lot of these crime patterns run from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and the criminals don't pay attention whether you're in the city of Port Huron or Fort Gratiot. It's the same guys pulling two different types of, or same type of crime, two different jurisdictions.
Sure.
So it's putting the pieces together. And plus, you have any of the major violent stuff as well.
Right. Some of the serious violent cases, like personal crimes, crimes against people.
Right.
You know, those, again, they're going to take a lot more time. If you've got people that you need to interview, a lot of times there are physical evidence.
Well, we'll talk later in the show a little bit maybe about the shooting in Capac and
Sure.
the time that went into that and the amount of data you had to just look into to put that case together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's complicated. Now, when you're a detective, you're promoted from a deputy sheriff to a detective. What kind of extra training do they receive?
Well, that's a very timely question because Steve Rickert was our most recent promotion, and Steve has spent the last 3 weeks in a variety of different schools, evidence tech school where he learns evidence collection and photography and different type of skills. There's also some technical. We have a total station, which is a piece of machinery that measures. It's used at accident scenes and at crime scenes to measure the distance from certain types of items that we can use in court.
That might be a good one to put on the show sometime.
Yeah, that would
You
be
know,
a
it's
good
really a
experiment.
fascinating piece of equipment, and it is wonderful. Crime scenes, car accidents is used at as well.
Right.
A lot of different stuff.
So there's some of that technical kind of training. There's also in-service training, death investigations. Our detectives are called out to
Right.
every suicide and a lot of sudden deaths. So there's a lot of training through the medical examiner's office that the detectives are involved with.
So, you know, we're dealing with any overdoses, any sudden or unnatural, so you don't know why the person died. Not to mention, unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of suicides.
Yes.
So, you know, it's going to keep a detective very busy. How about a typical day at the sheriff's office for the detective bureau, if there is such a thing?
You know, we have briefings in the morning where we go over the previous hot sheet from the, you know, either the weekend if it's a Monday or the previous night. Discuss if there's a lot of times there'll be links to cases we're already working on. A suspect's name will come up on a case that we're already working on. So that detective that's been assigned to it, a lot of times it'll be a break in the case because nobody has put the two pieces together. And we've had that happen multiple times when we'll get a phone call in the morning and say, hey, so-and-so was on the hot sheet, and we've already been investigating that person for another crime.
You know, explain what the hot sheet is, because I don't know.
Sure, yeah. The hot sheet is each night during the course of 24 hours, the road officers and detectives and supervisors, as they come across important incidents, they would put a small summary and turn that in, and then that gets printed up, and it gets handed out internally and also externally to other departments, to the probation officers, to the prosecutor's office, so that, again, it's trying to share that communication.
And we started that a few years back, and so when you'll see a deputy at a roll call, just like you would on TV, they're going over their hot sheet. You know, it's your first day back to work, and you'll know your first day's back on Monday, hey, there was a domestic at this house on Saturday and this one on Sunday and a home invasion here. Puts them all up to speed of what's going on in their community. Right. It's really a vital tool, but it's only as good as the information we put in it.
Right, as part of that, sharing that information.
Now, how about some roles in they play the detectives in major criminal cases where the road patrol deputies so often are going from call to call to call to call, where the detectives, they'll kind of they could get dialed in and sometimes devote a little more time where the road patrol can't to a certain case.
You know, the biggest thing, and again, I've been back there a year now, the biggest thing I've seen is the detective has the direct contact with the victim. You mentioned the Capac shooting.
Right.
You know, we were in daily contact with that victim, and this case, went out through the course of 10, 11 months, and we were in daily contact with that victim, updating on the progress of the case and, different type of court hearings, what was going to be involved, the time, and coordinating that. So that's the biggest thing I see, especially from the public's perspective, is that detective is going to have a personal contact on a daily basis with, especially those serious crimes we're talking about, the crimes against victims. Yeah. We've also had a rash of a lot of break-ins in some of these homeowners, and the detective is key because they're there, they're available, they're normally either at the desk, so they're available a lot more than the road officers are. Right,
right. And it's gotten so specialized too. I know the Capac case, there was a lot of technical data on cell phones and computers we had to look at, and that's almost takes a whole detective in itself anymore, the way that the computers, when we started, 25 years ago, cybercrime was a non-event.
Right.
And now, we could have 5 detectives doing that, and we still wouldn't get it all done.
And it's changing like on a monthly basis. As the phones get upgraded, we have to keep upgrading our equipment that
Right.
is able to get that data off. So it's a continual battle to keep all your equipment and all your training updated.
We are certainly in a technical evolution here right now.
Yeah, and a lot of the detectives are stepping up, and honing up on those skills and keeping up on those. But as you see, as things progress, we have to have specialized people that are able to,
Right.
to utilize this technical information.
Well, there's a lot of training. I know another one of our detectives that retired, Detective Amy, he left to go teach full-time. He had a lot of time into just computer crimes. I mean, and it was a continual basis getting him educated just to keep him up to speed with the technology that was changing. I mean, it's amazing.
This is probably a good time to put in is I know the general public thinks that you can just access this data, and we're bound by a lot of laws, and most of this technical information we have to obtain search warrants for.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not as simple as just hitting a switch and clacking on your keyboard. There's a legal process. There's a prosecutor involved. There's a judge that has to authorize that search warrant, and usually it's 2 hours a minimum for typing up and getting and that's quick if you can get a search warrant in 2 hours.
Well, when we watch it on TV, Matt, they go to a commercial break, they come back, and they're already serving the search warrant there. It seems to go a lot smoother and a lot faster there.
Yeah, unfortunately, it gives people a skewed view of what really goes on.
I think it does. Let's talk about putting a case together. How important is it to collect evidence? Let's talk about evidence at a scene. How do you know what's evidence and what's not evidence?
Well, a lot of times you don't, and I know maybe in our demos later on, one of the most important things we have is a camera. And the big plus about digital photography now is you can take as many pictures as you want, and you don't have to worry about developing. I know when we went to digital photography, we saved the county thousands of dollars because we didn't have to
Right.
develop the film anymore. And the K-PAC shooting is a good example. There's probably over 200 or 300 photographs related to that crime scene.
Absolutely.
So we're able to use those type of information, and that's just the starting point. Evidence, weather affects it. We've had a couple incidents out in the out in the county area where it's either snowing out or it's raining out, and there's a potential for it to destroy the evidence fairly quickly. So that's where photographs, sometimes we're able to reconstruct that down the road, because if it's a really bad rainstorm, that's going to be gone within a few minutes.
Right.
So
That's where things like that total station helps. You can get out there at a trying to collect evidence on a multiple fatal car accident and put it together quickly and try to lock in the diagram before everything's gone.
Right, because you can see at an accident scene with all the debris, and I guess the way I always look at things, if this is a trial, if this is a criminal case, it's going to go to trial. So we have to look at everything as if this was going to go to a trial. How are we going to present it? How are we going to preserve the evidence? How are we going to display it for a jury to decide?
Right.
And if you go on that basis, it really helps you in perspective as to how you collect the evidence.
Okay. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk a little more about collecting evidence. We're going to do a display on some processing evidence, and this is Sheriff Tim Donnellon serving St. Clair County. Welcome back to Serving St. Clair County. Sheriff Tim Donnellon, and joining me is Detective Lieutenant Matt Paulus. And Matt, we're going to have a demonstration on some evidence tech and fingerprints here.
Yeah, and the fingerprints obviously have been around for a long time. We do have some luck with it. Again, I wanted to give the public little disclaimer there because TV kind of shows you lifting the prints and sticking them into a machine, and a few minutes later they got the person arrested, and that's not what happens.
There's a lot to it. And we have to have them in a database, too.
Right, and we do have the automated fingerprint identification system. It's called AFIS. If we are able to pick up or lift a suitable print, it can be submitted, but again, it goes through the lab. It's not something we do locally here. It's got to be taken down to one of the state police labs, and they have technicians that are able to work with it and enter it into that database. And we have had some success in some cases with prints, but again, the person whose print is on that piece of evidence, they have to be in the system first.
Well, and it's tough. I mean, we're getting much better. Everybody that comes into our jail now, we have the DNA taken from them. There's fingerprints, obviously. So there's a good database, but the first-time criminal's not in our system. The other thing I think that is really difficult is that the crime labs are so overworked and swamped. I mean, there's never been less employees in the Michigan State Police crime labs with more work to do than we are today.
Right, and the lab is really looking at evidence that they can use. It's called evidence triaging. So they're not just going to take any piece of evidence, and they want evidence that they have a pretty good idea there's going to be something there.
Absolutely.
So that's the future too. They've done a lot of research and studies into it, and they know there's certain evidence they have better luck with, and they want to put the resources towards the evidence that they're going to be successful.
You know, when you're overwhelmed like they are, you have to work hard as always, but you got to work smart and hard. You know, you got to pick the stuff that's going to land you in circuit court with a conviction. And the stuff that's just a waste of time is just that. It has to get pushed to the bottom. So what do we need to do here, Matt?
Well, we're going to just demonstrate just a very simple print lifting. And if you just want to put your hand anywhere on there, Sheriff.
Okay, so this is a window of a house.
Yeah, glass is one of the better.
Getting ready to break into the house and check the window, see if it's locked. I got my big hand on there.
And we tried earlier before the show here, you can't see it up close, but there's a kind of a surface to the countertops. And if you look in your own homes, you'll find out some surfaces are much better for transferring fingerprints and some aren't. And obviously glass is one of the better ones.
It does make a mess, doesn't it?
It makes a mess, and it's kind of permanent too. Some cellophane, I had really good luck with a cigarette pack one time. So.
Well, and we have the fuming chamber.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to mention is a fuming where you can place, and it's, again, wouldn't be able to, this might fit into it, but it's, I don't know if it's about a 2x4 box that we can actually fume in our office now.
Well, that's pretty cool.
And there's actually some of the road officers that are pretty proficient with it, and they're able to
in
use that.
narcotics, a lot of narcotics are transported in plastic baggies. And we would put those in a fuming chamber. Sure. And then that would fume them, and you could find the fingerprints off the plastic baggies. Yep. Very
it's a good example,
for crack cocaine. And you take a guy that took a tour in narcotics, now he's back in patrol, he's going to be pretty dialed in on the fuming chamber because he's did a lot of work on that.
Right. But again, I just want to caution the public because a lot of times people think, oh, automatically there's going to be a print. A lot of times we find out it's the homeowner's print or it's the cleaning person's print. So when we send these to the lab, we also have to send elimination prints, which is somebody else that was in the household, so that they compare it to.
Now this looks pretty good. I mean, here I set my hand here. I didn't have my palm down in the middle of it, but I got my fingers on there like you're crouched up against a window. You got pretty good prints on my top of my 4 fingers. You got partial thumb.
Right, and like I said,
we
would photograph this beforehand in case there was any damage to it. But it's very easy to lift,
And there's a lot of times where you're going to take the piece of property right out of the house with us.
Right, especially for the fuming tank, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So there you go, lifted it right off on tape.
Right, but the only thing we're not showing here is we're kind of in like a experimental perfect setting. It's not raining out.
No.
It's not snowing out. It's not 0 degrees out, or it's not 100 degrees out. So obviously all those factors are going to play into it. But again, we have had some success going back, I think 20 years of actually, I remember a CSE case in Boyer Township, a sexual assault case, where the detective was able to print a print from an inside door, and that print led to an arrest in a case. So.
Well, so what you did here is you threw some dust down, you brought up the fingerprint, and then you...
Then I transferred it, and we have cards that we carry in the evidence kit, and then they are collected. They're then taken to the State Police Crime Lab. We use Sterling Heights, and they're able to use the techniques that they have down there to put it into this national database.
Right. So here's my fingerprint. Put the dust in, it raises the print. You take the tape that takes an image of the print, put it on a card, and then the card goes to the crime lab.
Right. And
Really pretty simple.
yeah, one of the new things is it doesn't show all your palm, but that's one of the things that all the jails in the county are doing is they're collecting palm prints now, and that's one of the latest changes.
Palm
is
prints
the palm
and
prints.
DNA.
And DNA is a whole nother.
Everybody has a Q-tip in their mouth when they come into our facility, and we get a DNA. Everybody, whether they're drunk driving or a murderer,
Right.
we get it there. Well, it's interesting when you see this, and but the real idea is to try to solve the crime, isn't it? Not necessarily arresting somebody, or you may think this is your target. It may not be your target after all.
Right, and that's one thing, as a new detective comes in, you have to look at everything with an open mind. When you walk in, you can't come into a new case with any kind of preconceived determination because you may overlook something.
And you find in a lot of your cases that there's maybe even false accusations are made.
Oh, certainly.
Particularly when you have some of these crimes that are, maybe there's marital disharmony and there's pitting a child in the middle accusations, and you got to really dig deep into those things
Right.
to make sure that the crime is solved. And sometimes the crime solved mean there is no charges.
Right.
It works the same way. It's not always that you end up in court.
Yeah, it's going in with an open eye and following through on the leads and following through on the evidence.
Well, let's talk just a little bit about, just a couple of some tips for some of the folks as far as keeping their valuables safe. I know we're talking about fingerprinting, which is basically breaking into houses is what we'd have these on. There's a lot of that going on in the community.
Well, I can tell you two things that people should be doing. If they have expensive jewelry, number one, they should be documenting it, but put it somewhere safe. Either you have a small safe or somewhere, don't leave it out in the open. Most of the break-ins we've had in the recent 12 months, they're in and out of the house within a couple of minutes.
Right.
They're not spending time. They're going through and finding jewelry that's left out.
Okay.
So put the jewelry away, document it, make sure you have good records of it, so that if we do find it, we're able to track it. Some of the ones that have inscriptions are helpful, but most of these people are taking them to pawn shops or to gold shops, and there's no way that we can identify whose it is,
Right.
because there's no markings on it.
Yeah, they have to be specific in the report.
So I don't know if the future is some kind of, engraving that you can't see, microscopic engraving on some of this jewelry would be helpful. And then that goes back to the other property. Identify it some way. Put your driver's license number is what they used to teach when I was in the police academy. Put some kind of marking on there. If we recover 10 chainsaws, for example, it's a lot more helpful if it's got your name or your initials or something inscribed so that you can say, oh yeah, I have this type of thing, I have this marking on all my tools.
I remember when we recovered all of the stolen property last year in St. Clair Township, we had it in the garage. And we had the citizens coming through from that subdivision trying to point out, okay, that's my VCR, that's my camera, and it was kind of difficult. I mean, we knew that we had reports to match it up with, but a lot of it is pretty generic. Here's a Pentex camera. There's maybe 10 of them are recovered. It's pretty tough.
And a lot of people, and I'm to blame myself, is they don't keep all the paperwork for their things. But with modern technology, even if you can scan that into a file and keep it, so that that does happen, you're unfortunate, you're a victim of a crime, you can pull that up easily and say, hey, here's the serial number.
Right, here's the model number.
That's going to help us, number one, recover your property. But from my perspective, it's going to be able to tie that to another case. So that may be the difference between somebody getting jail time and somebody going to prison.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's just a tremendous amount of information, in the Detective Bureau that goes on every day, and a tremendous amount of tips that we could go on and on with. But it's tough. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day you're a detective, but you guys virtually are on call around the clock.
Right. We have detectives that get called out, average the last couple of weeks, it's been at least twice, 2 or 3 times a week. The detective will get called out at nighttime. So.
Well, I tell you, we sure appreciate everything you do for the community and for us, Matt. It's been a great career so far, and keep up the good work. When we come back to Serving St. Clair County, we're going to have Stephanie Ignish from the Animal Control, and we're going to bring a couple pets on that are looking to get adopted. This is Sheriff Tim Donnellon, Serving St. Clair County.
There is strength in our numbers. Our call is to action, to practice what we preach. Be there to care. Our passion is compassion. We're only human, but together we're humane. Our letters stand for taking a stand, for taking the lead, for filling the need. The American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Be part of our heart.
Welcome back to Serving St. Clair County. This is Sheriff Tim Donnellon, and with me is our office manager at Animal Control, regular guest, Stephanie Ignish. And Steph, who do we got with us today?
We have Paco with us today.
Paco.
Paco is a little over 5 years old, our vet says.
Okay.
Wired hair Chihuahua.
Wow. I've never seen such a dog.
Yeah.
I don't know what
it's all different shapes and sizes for
really
Chihuahuas. Different breeds.
Different texture, hair, everything.
Yes.
It's called a what again?
A wired hair Chihuahua.
A wired hair. Well, it is kind of coarse.
Yeah.
Now, how old is Paco there?
He's a little bit over 5 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what's his story?
Well, he came in. He was an owner give up. Couldn't
Okay.
have him anymore.
Yeah, and that happens. People, they move housing,
Right.
they divorce, all kinds of different things
All
happen.
different situations, and we got him checked out, and he got put back into adoption today.
So he's ready to go.
So he's ready to go. He's already neutered and
ready to
go
go.
home.
So you show up to Animal Control. What's the price for Paco?
His price is Paco, yes.
Paco.
$120.
$120, and
that's
that's
all of his shots, and he's like I said,
licensed, ready to go.
all fixed and ready to go home.
That's a heck of a deal.
Yes.
Perfect. And we've got another, maybe another
Yes,
pet
we
here to
do.
show us
We
there.
got another pet.
All right. We're going to trade Paco,
We're
and
gonna trade
he's
Paco.
looking for a home. That'd be a great pet for a small house.
This is
Whoa, almost got loose on us.
excuse me. This is Fritz.
Fritz does not
Yes.
want to be here.
Fritz is pretty friendly.
Fritz is very friendly.
He's pretty friendly. He's an
Yes.
explorer.
Yeah, he's in a new setting today.
Yeah, this is all
Beautiful.
new for him.
He's big.
So they say he's a little over 10 years old.
Wow.
But he is looking good and healthy for his age.
He sure is. Beautiful
So,
coat on him.
Yep, and he is all ready to go home too. $75 for cats.
$75.
he
He's
just
ready to
wants to
go.
run.
I like the tiger stripe on him. He's like a Brendel
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
But
yes.
what's his title? He's a American
Is it domestic
short
hair?
Domestic short hair.
Yeah.
All right, and
Yeah.
our Animal Control, 3378 Griswold Road.
Yes, our
Which
office
is-
hours are Tuesday through Friday.
Okay.
Office hours are from 8:30 to 4, and then on Saturday from 8 to 3.
Perfect.
And then our adoption hours are Tuesday through Friday from 10:30 to 3:30, 2:30, and then Saturday from 10 to 2:30.
And there's every variety of dog or cat you'd ever imagine.
Right.
Everything comes in there. Whether
Right.
you're looking for a St. Bernard, a hunting dog, or a bulldog, you'll find one.
Right.
And yellow cats, striped cats, black and white cats, that's all I call them is cats. So they're different ones. But that's really a big, healthy male there.
Yes, he's ready to go home.
Be a good mouser
He
for
needs a good couch or a garage to.
good couch or garage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stephanie, thanks for
All right.
bringing them in, and let's find a home for these two.
Okay,
And
thank
this
you.
is Tim Donnellon, serving St. Clair County.